Hollywood's golden age sold the illusion of perfection, flawless performances, timeless stars, and carefully crafted legends. But behind the scenes, the truth was far less glamorous. Some of the biggest names of classic cinema were quietly replaced, edited out, or pushed aside without the audience ever knowing. Not because they lacked talent, but because studios valued control, image, and profit above loyalty. Contracts were rewritten, scenes reshot, and faces swapped, all in silence. In this video, we uncover the stories of 7 Golden Age stars who were secretly replaced in films, often while their names remained on posters and credits. These replacements weren't accidents. They were calculated decisions made in dark cutting rooms and private offices. And in many cases, the stars themselves had no idea until it was already done. Before we continue, if you're interested in the hidden side of classic Hollywood, the secret studios never wanted audiences to notice, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. These stories reveal how easily fame could be rewritten, even at the height of success. Stay until the end, because the final replacement was so carefully done that most viewers still don't realize it happened. James Cagney, the star who was quietly replaced on his own film. James Cagney was one of Warner Brothers' most reliable stars, known for his explosive energy, sharp dialogue delivery, and commanding screen presence. Audiences associated him with intensity and authenticity, which made him a studio favorite during the Golden Age. But what most viewers never knew was that even someone as powerful as Cagney could be quietly replaced when he became inconvenient. In one of his later productions, the studio made a decision that revealed how little loyalty truly existed behind the glamour. During filming, tensions between Cagney and Warner Brothers escalated over creative disagreements and working conditions. Cagney was outspoken, demanding fair treatment and creative respect, traits studios often labeled as difficult. Rather than openly fire him or delay production, the studio chose a quieter solution. Portions of his performance were reduced, reshot, and in some cases replaced without public acknowledgement. Body doubles and stand-in actors were used for wide shots in specific sequences, while dialogue-heavy scenes were edited to minimize his screen time. To the audience, it appeared seamless. To Cagney, it was a warning. What made the replacement especially insidious was that his name remained attached to the film. Posters, promotions, and credits still highlighted him as the star, maintaining the illusion that nothing had changed. In reality, the final cut no longer reflected the performance he had given. Scenes he believed were central to the story were either trimmed or altered, shifting focus to other actors the studio favored more at the time. This wasn't an artistic decision, it was a power move. The studio feared Cagney's growing influence. He was popular enough to challenge authority, and Warner Brothers wanted to reassert control. By quietly replacing portions of his work, they demonstrated that no actor, no matter how famous, was untouchable. There was no announcement, no confrontation, no explanation. The message was delivered through the edit room. Cagney discovered the extent of the changes only after the film's release. Watching his own movie, he realized entire sequences had been reshaped, his presence diluted. Publicly, he remained professional. Privately, the betrayal hardened his already strained relationship with the studio. This experience reinforced a brutal truth of Golden Age Hollywood. Studios didn't need to replace you completely to remove your power. They could simply rewrite you. For audiences, the illusion remained intact. The film appeared normal, even successful. Few suspected that the star they came to see had been partially erased from his own work. This kind of replacement was more dangerous than an outright dismissal. It left no scandal, no headlines, only quiet control. James Cagney's story exposes how studios used editing and silent replacements as tools of dominance. It wasn't about talent or performance. It was about obedience. And in the Golden Age, even the biggest stars could be replaced without ever leaving the screen. LANA Turner, the star whose performance was quietly erased and rebuilt. LANA Turner was one of MGM's most carefully managed stars, marketed as the perfect blend of beauty, vulnerability, and star power. Her films were designed to showcase her image as much as her acting, which made her especially vulnerable to studio interference. In one major production during the height of her fame, Turner was not openly fired or recast, but something far subtler and more damaging occurred. Large portions of her performance were quietly replaced, reshaped, and overwritten without her knowledge, creating a version of the film that no longer truly belonged to her. During production, studio executives grew concerned that Turner's performance didn't align with the tone they wanted to sell. Rather than delay the film or confront her directly, MGM chose to intervene behind the scenes. Scenes were reshot using stand-ins for physical movement and wide shots, while close-ups were selectively reused to maintain continuity. Dialogue-heavy moments were reduced, and in some cases, re-recorded lines were blended with footage shot weeks later. The audience never noticed, because MGM's editing department was among the most sophisticated in Hollywood. What made the situation especially cruel was that Turner remained the public face of the film. Her name dominated posters, her image filled magazines, and her performance was praised in reviews, even though much of what audiences responded to had been altered or replaced. The emotional arc she believed she had delivered was softened, redirected, and in places removed entirely. The studio had effectively reconstructed her performance in the editing room, using pieces of her work while quietly discarding the rest. Turner learned the truth only after the film's release, when she noticed scenes she remembered filming were missing, replaced by sequences she barely recognized. There was no explanation. MGM never acknowledged the changes publicly, and contractually, Turner had little power to object. The studio owned the footage, the final cut, and the narrative. To protest would have meant risking future roles or being labeled uncooperative, a reputation no Golden Age actress could survive. This form of replacement was particularly insidious because it left Turner present, but diminished. She wasn't removed from the film. She was reshaped into a version the studio preferred. Her instincts as an actress were overridden by executives who believed they understood audience expectations better than the person on screen. It sent a clear message. Even stars at the top of the studio hierarchy could be rewritten without consent. For viewers, the illusion was complete. The film succeeded, Turner remained famous, and no controversy followed. But behind the scenes, the experience changed her relationship with the studio forever. She understood that her image was not hers, and her performances could be taken apart and rebuilt at will. Replacement didn't always mean removal. Sometimes it meant erasure through editing. LANA Turner's story reveals one of Hollywood's quietest tricks. Studios didn't always need to replace stars outright. Sometimes they simply replaced the parts of them they didn't want the world to see. BELA Lugosi, the star who was replaced after death and never told BELA Lugosi, was one of the most recognizable faces of Hollywood's golden age, forever associated with the role that defined him, Dracula. His presence was unmistakable, his voice iconic, and his image inseparable from classic horror cinema. Yet one of the most disturbing examples of silent replacement in film history happened to Lugosi after he could no longer defend himself. In a project that would later become infamous, BELA Lugosi was replaced without consent, without acknowledgement, and without dignity, and most audiences never realized it. Near the end of his life, Lugosi filmed a small amount of footage for a low-budget science fiction film. At the time, he was struggling financially and physically, accepting work wherever it appeared. The footage he shot was limited, disconnected, and never part of a finished script. Shortly afterward, Lugosi died, leaving the project incomplete. Instead of abandoning the film or openly recasting the role, the director made a chilling decision: to continue the production by replacing Lugosi's physical presence entirely. A stand-in actor was hired, someone with a similar build, but no resemblance in face, voice, or performance style. The replacement was instructed to hide his face, covering it with a cape, turning away from the camera, or shielding himself behind shadows. Scenes were carefully staged to avoid revealing the substitution. Lugosi's original footage was spliced together with the stand-in's movements, creating the illusion that the actor was still present. There was no announcement, no explanation. Lugosi's name remained attached to the role. What made this replacement especially unsettling was the complete erasure of Lugosi's agency. He had not agreed to this continuation. He had not approved the use of his image alongside a stranger's body. The audience was never told that what they were watching was not Bela Lugosi, but a patchwork performance assembled after his death. In the Golden Age, studios and filmmakers held such power that even mortality did not end their control. For viewers at the time, the deception worked. The film was strange, disjointed, but few questioned the presence of Lugosi. His legend was strong enough to carry the illusion. Only years later did the truth become widely known, that much of what audiences believed was Lugosi's final performance was, in fact, someone else entirely. This was replacement at its most extreme. Lugosi was not edited down, rewritten, or overshadowed. He was physically replaced, scene by scene, without consent or acknowledgement. His identity was used as a marketing tool, while his actual presence was discarded. Bela Lugosi's story exposes a dark reality of Golden Age filmmaking. Studios and directors did not always see actors as people. They saw them as components, interchangeable, replaceable, and usable even after death. His silent replacement stands as one of the most haunting examples of how far Hollywood would go to preserve an illusion, even if it meant erasing the very star audiences believed they were watching. Joan Crawford, the star whose body was replaced while her face sold the film. Joan Crawford built her career on precision, control, and an iron grip over her image. Every gesture, every angle, every expression was calculated, which makes her silent replacement in one major production all the more unsettling. At the height of her power, Crawford was still subject to a studio system that prioritized efficiency over authenticity. In one film, while her name remained above the title and her face dominated the screen, large portions of her physical performance were quietly replaced, without public disclosure. During production, Crawford suffered from exhaustion and health issues that limited her ability to complete physically demanding scenes. Rather than delay filming or adjust the schedule, the studio chose a solution invisible to audiences: body doubles. Stand-ins were used extensively for wide shots, movement-heavy sequences, and scenes requiring stamina Crawford could no longer sustain at the time. Careful blocking, strategic lighting, and clever editing ensured that viewers would never notice the substitution. Close-ups featured Crawford's face, while her body, walking, turning, reacting, often belonged to someone else. What made this replacement particularly deceptive was how seamlessly it was integrated. The studio did not reshoot entire scenes or replace her outright. Instead, they stitched together fragments of performance, creating the illusion of continuity. Crawford's expressions carried the emotional weight, while another actor's physicality carried the scene. To the audience, it appeared as one flawless performance. To Crawford, it was a quiet violation of the control she fought so hard to maintain. The decision was never discussed publicly, and contractually, Crawford had little power to object. Studios owned the footage and the final cut, and body doubles were considered tools, not replacements. But this was replacement in all but name. The film no longer represented a complete performance by Joan Crawford. It was a constructed version of her presence, assembled in the editing room. Crawford later became even more rigid about her image, demanding approval over lighting, costumes, and camera angles. The experience reinforced a hard truth she already suspected. No matter how famous or powerful she became, the studio could still override her when it suited production needs. Replacement didn't always mean being fired. Sometimes it meant being quietly divided, face in one shot, body in another. For audiences, the illusion was perfect. Reviews praised Crawford's intensity and command, never realizing how much of what they saw had been manufactured. The deception was successful precisely because it was subtle. There was no scandal, no controversy, no correction, just a star who appeared fully present even when she wasn't. Joan Crawford's story reveals a lesser-known tactic of Golden Age Hollywood. When stars couldn't fully deliver on demand, studios didn't stop the machine. They replaced the missing pieces, and as long as the illusion held, no one asked whose body was really on screen. Spencer Tracy, the star, whose voice and presence were quietly substituted Spencer. Tracy was known for his naturalism, subtlety, and emotional restraint, qualities that made him one of the most respected actors of Hollywood's golden age. His performances felt grounded and authentic, which is why audiences rarely questioned what they saw on screen. Yet, during the later years of his career, when health issues began interfering with production, studios quietly found ways to preserve the illusion of continuity without revealing how much Tracy was actually being replaced. The solution was not recasting, but substitution so discreet that even attentive viewers never noticed. As Tracy's health declined, particularly due to heart and respiratory problems, his ability to endure long shooting schedules became limited. Productions could not afford delays, and openly replacing him would have damaged box office confidence. Instead, filmmakers relied heavily on stand-ins for blocking, rehearsals, and even completed scenes. Wide shots were staged using body doubles positioned carefully to mimic Tracy's posture and movement, while lighting and camera angles obscured identifying details. Close-ups were filmed separately, sometimes weeks later, allowing editors to assemble a performance that appeared continuous but was, in reality, fragmented. More subtle still was the use of voice substitution. In scenes where Tracy's delivery lacked clarity or strength, lines were re-recorded and blended into existing footage. In some cases, dialogue was altered entirely to minimize his speaking time, shifting emphasis to reaction shots or other characters. The audience heard Tracy's voice, but not always as it was originally spoken on set. The performance was refined, reshaped, and partially replaced in post-production, all without acknowledgement. What made this practice particularly invisible was Tracy's acting style. His stillness and understatement made it easier to cut around him without disrupting the rhythm of a scene. Studios exploited this, using his reputation for subtlety as cover for substitution. The final product preserved the idea of Spencer Tracy, calm, controlled, present, even when he was physically absent for significant portions of filming. Tracy himself was aware of the adjustments, but the system offered no alternatives. To step away would have meant canceling projects and disappointing collaborators. To protest would have risked reputation and future roles. Like many stars of his era, he accepted quiet replacement as the cost of remaining visible. The studio's priority was not honesty, but completion. For audiences, the illusion held. Reviews praised Tracy's restraint and emotional depth, unaware that what they were watching was a carefully assembled performance made up of fragments, substitutions, and edits. There was no deception notice, no disclosure. The studio's success lay in making replacement invisible. Spencer Tracy's story highlights a sophisticated form of silent replacement, one that didn't remove the star, but gradually reduced his physical presence while preserving his image. Hollywood didn't replace him with another actor outright. It replaced pieces of him, carefully and efficiently, ensuring the legend remained intact while the reality quietly disappeared from view. Audrey Hepburn, the star who was silently doubled to preserve perfection. Audrey Hepburn was presented to the world as effortless grace, light, elegant, and almost unreal in her perfection. That carefully protected image made her one of the most valuable stars of the golden age, but it also made her vulnerable to a kind of silent replacement that audiences were never meant to notice. As her fame grew, studios became increasingly obsessed with preserving Audrey's fragile, flawless screen presence at all costs. When reality threatened that image, the solution was not honesty, but substitution. During several productions, particularly those involving physical movement, dance, or extended shooting schedules, Audrey's health and physical limitations became a concern. She was naturally slender, frequently exhausted, and prone to illness, yet the studio demanded visual perfection in every frame. Rather than adjust expectations, filmmakers quietly relied on doubles to maintain the illusion. Body doubles were used for wide shots, dance rehearsals, and physically demanding sequences, carefully matched to Audrey's posture and movement. Strategic lighting, distance, and blocking ensured that audiences would never question what they were seeing. In musical and performance-heavy scenes, replacement went even further. Audrey's singing voice, famously soft and untrained, was replaced in post-production to meet studio standards. While audiences believed they were hearing Audrey Hepburn, they were often hearing another performer entirely. The substitution was seamless, uncredited, and never explained. Her face sold the performance, but the sound and movement. Few suspected that what they were watching was a carefully assembled performance built from fragments, doubles, and edits. The studio succeeded because the replacement respected the myth. Bogart wasn't removed, he was preserved. This type of silent replacement represents one of the most sophisticated practices of Golden Age Hollywood. It wasn't about deception through absence, but deception through construction. Studios didn't replace Humphrey Bogart the star. They replaced the labor required to sustain him while keeping his image intact. His face, his name, and his legacy remained untouched, even as parts of his actual performance were quietly outsourced. Humphrey Bogart's story completes the picture of how replacement truly worked in classic cinema. It wasn't always dramatic or cruel on the surface. Often, it was subtle, technical, and invisible, a system designed to protect profits, preserve icons, and maintain illusions at any cost. In the Golden Age, stars didn't always leave the screen when they were replaced. Sometimes they stayed, carefully edited, carefully doubled, and carefully rewritten, while the audience never realized how much of what they were watching no longer belonged to them. Humphrey Bogart's screen presence was built on authority, restraint, and a voice that carried quiet power. As one of Hollywood's most respected stars, audiences believed every moment he appeared on screen was authentic. But in the later years of his career, that illusion was carefully maintained through silent replacement. As illness and exhaustion made long shoots difficult, studios avoided recasting him and instead relied on subtle substitutions. Body doubles were used for wide shots and movement-heavy scenes, filmed in shadow or from behind. Dialogue was refined in post-production, and reaction shots were reused to reduce his physical demands. Bogart's minimalist acting style made this possible. His stillness allowed editors to remove or replace portions of his performance without breaking continuity. To viewers, nothing seemed wrong. In fact, many praised his restraint as artistic maturity. In reality, his presence was increasingly constructed in the editing room. Hollywood didn't replace Humphrey Bogart outright. It replaced the parts that reality could no longer sustain, preserving the legend while quietly rewriting the performance.